It's Sally here to help you get a camping reservation for this weekend. So these tips should work in Canada and the US. They might also work in other jurisdictions. So if you live here in Canada or the US, you probably know that a lot of the good campgrounds book up right away within moments of the websites making those reservations available. So what do you do if you didn't get one of those reservations? Do not lose hope. There's a lot of options. You just need to be a little bit more open-minded. So the first tip I have is to check for cancellations. Here in BC, we have a website that allows you to see the entire province, whether there are any availabilities, and then you can zoom in on different regions. Now, if you open that website in the week before you want to go camping, you're going to see little green dots start to pop up, and those are cancellations. And I noticed last week I watched for these, and throughout the week, cancellations popped up for Friday, Saturday night. In almost all of the campgrounds here in my region of Vancouver Island, I was able to get one at Rathtrevor Beach, but I had a lot of different options had I just kept watching that website. So you might need to be a little bit more open-minded. And if you want one of those really, really high demand campgrounds, you might need to press refresh a number of times on your computer until that pops up. To maximize this strategy, I think you would want to get to know the cancellation policy in your jurisdiction. When do people need to cancel? What is the incentive for them to cancel? What is the likelihood of those cancellations happening? And when do you need to book? Is there a drop dead date for booking for this weekend? My next strategy is to look at other campgrounds that are a little bit more under the radar. So that would be private campgrounds, campgrounds that are operated by contractors, not-for-profit campgrounds, forestry campsites. There's all sorts of different options out there, and sometimes they're really hard to find. So I would recommend talking to your friends or your colleagues, anyone who does a lot of camping. Ask them if they have any tips about places you can camp with a last-minute reservation or without a reservation where there's likely to be some availability. Some of the private campgrounds I've camped at have actually been really, really wonderful. I find those for-profit campgrounds are often in way less demand than the provincial parks, the state parks, the national parks. Sometimes they have really nice facilities, like these amazing bathrooms that I found last year at a campground, or other amenities that you might not normally find at a provincial or state or national park campground. They do often cater to RVs, but some of them will have dedicated tent sites, or if you sleep in your car, then an RV site might do just fine. One of my favorite campgrounds is actually a not-for-profit campground, and I had no idea that this campground existed for a long time, and it actually is quite a bit cheaper than the provincial campsites. The next idea is to look for overflow sites at publicly run campgrounds. So around here, there's a few different campgrounds where there's actually an overflow area. It's a field or something of that nature where anybody who shows up who doesn't have a campsite to go to can set up their tent in that field. In the US, sometimes those sites are actually quite a bit cheaper than getting your own actual campsite, but often they are reserved for hikers and bikers. So you'll want to investigate that. They might not even advertise that there is an overflow lot because they do not want to be inundated. If they are just for hikers and bikers, then maybe you want to kit out your bike and go on a little bike trip this weekend. This video is not about boondocking or wild camping, but there are certain areas where you can just set up your tent legally in an area where there's an outhouse or other amenities, maybe water, where camping is totally legal on public land. So you may want to ask your friends and family and colleagues about whether they know any spots like that on public land that feel safe, that are attractive places to camp, and that is a possible alternative to getting a conventional campsite. Now, if you're starting to get a bit desperate because none of these things are working, something I have relied on in the past is an app called HipCamp, and I believe there are other similar apps. And these are apps where private landowners can advertise their camping spots that they have in their backyards or on their farms. And often it's just one or two spots. There's quite a few of them across Canada and the US. I have stayed in a number of them. They have actually been really wonderful experiences, although I do think you want to choose carefully. Make sure that you're not camping somewhere where you're not going to feel safe or comfortable. But I've had some wonderful experiences. Sometimes they offer some really nice amenities, like this campground in Montana, where there was an outdoor shower just for the 2 campers who were there that night. One of the benefits of camping in people's backyard is you get to know them a little bit. And in the same vein as those camping apps, I have also used Airbnb only one time to camp in somebody's yard. I'm not sure how common that is, but you might want to have a look at that just in case. There are a couple of apps. I believe they are paid apps. One is called Schnurp, and it will let you enter in what campground you want on what dates, and then it will alert you once there's an availability. There is also a new feature on the BC Parks website that allows you to get a notification. It's free. And I'm not sure about other platforms, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that start to trickle out as camping becomes more and more popular and people get more and more frustrated trying to get camp spots. So definitely have a look, see if there's a notification platform. I believe for the BC one, once you get that notification, you need to get right on it and make that reservation. It does not make it for you, it just notifies you. So make sure you're keeping an eye on your inbox if you do sign up for those notifications. If you are betting on a first come, first served campsite, you're going to want to have a backup option, even if that's dispersed camping or a Walmart parking lot or couch surfing, just something. And I would suggest getting there early as soon as you can after you're allowed to check in. And then that way you have the maximum amount of time as well. If you end up not getting that campsite, you can turn around and find something else. So if you're planning on visiting major national parks like Banff or Yosemite, the chances of you getting a last minute reservation are not great. You'll probably want to just set your expectations a little bit lower. But if you look for private campgrounds or you use an app like HipCamp, you might be able to find sites that are just outside the park boundaries. So that's what I did on a big road trip where I visited a whole bunch of major national parks. I was able to string together a set of campgrounds using the tips that I just talked about. There are some national parks, at least here in Canada, that are much less popular than others, including Waterton National Park and Grasslands National Park. They are beautiful parks and they are way easier to get a campground in, even if you're not sitting at your computer the moment that the reservations get released. I do really recommend maybe broadening your scope and thinking about visiting some of those parks. So that's all my advice. If you have any other tips or tricks, then maybe put them below in the comments. See you out there.